I recently did a poll on my Instagram and I asked my audience, do you believe that the universe has your back? And a good majority said yes, but also I think it was about like 30% said no, not really. And it made me think of a time, of a story that I really wanted to share with you guys, of a moment in my life where I was really down and out and the universe did me a huge solid. And it's quite a remarkable story. And that's what this video is about. It's a story time, my first story time. I figured I might as well, you know, share parts of my story with you guys. And this one in particular was just a moment when I was so surprised and so taken care of by the universe, and it restored my faith in humanity. So without further ado, this is the day I realized the universe definitely has my back. Okay, so I'll start from the beginning. For those of you who don't know, I'm from Toronto, Canada, and in 2017 I left Canada for the first time, not for the very first time, but the first time on my own to solo travel the world, and I was gone for a total of 2 years. So in that span of 2 years, I lived in Australia for a year. So this story happens, takes place basically when I went to Australia. So I got a working holiday visa in Australia. I'm just gonna tell you all the details so you fully understand, right? So I land in Perth, Western Australia in October. In November, I meet this guy. Let's call him Frank. I meet Frank and I don't know, sparks fly, and I'm like, oh my God, I really like this guy. Long story short, I'm like, wait, I didn't come to Australia to fall in love with Frank, so I'm gonna keep traveling and I'm gonna move to Melbourne, which is the East Coast, and Melbourne has more modeling opportunities. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna move, I'm gonna leave, and see you, Frank. So catch flights, not feelings. And
I'm a savage.
I left to Melbourne, and I was in Melbourne for about 3 months, and I was like, man, Melbourne really feels like Toronto. Like, I don't feel like I'm abroad. Like, I need that feeling of like newness, but pretty much looks like downtown Toronto. It's very, very similar in culture and people and all of that. So it's kind of in Melbourne, just feeling kind of like, I need something different. But low key, I was actually really missing Frank. I was like, man, like maybe I shouldn't have left Frank. Like, that was actually a really good relationship. Anyways, me and Frank would FaceTime almost every day. And long story short, me and Frank decided I decided that I was going to go to Asia for a bit and travel Asia. I was making good money in Australia. Well, this is kind of where the story gets a little weird. So I decided I was going to take a month off, right? So a month off from bartending and whatever else, and go to Asia. And I was going to do 2 weeks solo. 1 week in Bali, 1 week in Thailand by myself. And then on the third week, I'd meet up with my friend Claire. She'd meet me in Thailand. We do a bit of Thailand, and then we go to Cambodia and Vietnam. Vietnam, then Cambodia. So the trip ended in Cambodia, right? So the 2 weeks that I was solo, I decided to meet up with Frank, and because he was living in Perth, which is really close to Bali. So it's like a, excuse me.
Coronavirus!
Yeah, so it was like a 3-hour flight from Perth to Bali. It's really close. So I reunite with Frank in Bali, right? And low key, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of excited to see Frank. Obviously, it's been a while, and we kept our connection. I was just like really excited. And long story short, because basically Frank ends up breaking my heart in Thailand, and I was devastated. I was devastated because I felt like a fool for like kind of just putting all my eggs in that basket, even though I had left. You know, trust your intuition, lady. By the time I met up with my friend Claire, I was really just not feeling it, feeling really down the dumps. And basically I was just kind of sad while traveling. And if you've ever traveled abroad by yourself and you catch the feels, it takes a minute to like get out of it. But on top of that, I was also losing a lot of money. I didn't properly budget, right? So travel tip, if you ever go anywhere, transportation, triple it, no matter what. So I didn't calculate all the ferries, taxis. I just didn't calculate it, to be honest. I was, you know, I guess just being a newbie backpacker, but I didn't calculate all the things I would need to do in between getting from place to place. I was like, yeah, food, hotel, like, you know, it was poorly planned on my end. So I was losing a lot of money, and I didn't budget for that. So my bank account and my feelings were just going lower and lower and lower. And basically, I tried to make the best of the rest of the trip. I went to Cambodia, I went to Vietnam, And at the end of the trip, my friend Claire, her visa in Australia was completed, so she was going back home to Toronto. And I was like, man, like I'm heartbroken, I'm broke, I could go back to Australia. Claire was kind of my link to Australia, like I was staying at her house as well. I had my, like, whatever, so it was just kind of like a turning point where I was like really just in the dumps. And my financial situation, I should be honest about it, like it was pretty bad. So I pretty much ended that trip with like $100 in my account, like total. Like I went through my, yeah, it was a mess, and my heart was a mess, and it was just bad. So anyways, I don't know what it was within me, but I was feeling so like stubborn, and I was like, you know, I talked to my mom about the situation. She's like, just come home, like you've been gone for almost a year and a half now, like just come home. And I'm like, no, like no, I gotta go back to Australia. Like this whole solo traveling thing wasn't about Frank to begin with, right? So it's like, anyways, my heart just said go back to Australia. And yeah, so I went back to Australia, and I was broke and homeless. Shit had happened with the house that I was staying in, and essentially we all had to like find new places to live. So, and Claire, my good friend, had gone back to Canada. So I was feeling extremely vulnerable, extremely heartbroken over Frank, and also extremely broke. And my living situation was just in shambles. So luckily I had a mutual friend of Claire's, and he allowed me to blow up an air mattress and sleep in his living room. Okay, so I was yeah, and then my job situation was shitty too. So I had to, cause I took a month off, like my job, I didn't have a lot of shifts essentially, right? So I had to look for a new job and a new apartment, and I was just feeling so stupid. Like, you know when you just feel so stupid? Like you're just like, fuck. So basically my good friend's letting me sleep on his floor, on an air mattress, and on top of that, he has 2 cats, and they're not really well potty trained, and it just smells like cat feces everywhere. And it was just not a good living situation. I'm not trying to talk shit, I'm very grateful for the situation, but ultimately I was just like, fuck, you know? So basically, I had to get myself together, like, you know, do or die. Like, you gotta stand up on your own 2 feet, and that's what I did. So I started to apply for jobs online, and I remember I was actually about an hour out of the downtown Melbourne core, living at this guy's house on the living room floor. So I had to commute into the city to go to interviews. So I'd scheduled 3 interviews for one day, so I could just do it all. And like, I'm feeling a little defeated because I'm just kind of exhausted from like the whole Asia trip, getting over Frank, and just like all of that. But I'm like, okay, let's go into the city, let's get this job, you know, and then I'll get the job and then worry about my living situation after. So I went to 3 interviews. I'm pretty much like Goldilocks at this point, right? First one was decent. It was like exciting, but not too exciting. You know, you're kind of like, I could do this job, but like I don't think I'll enjoy it. Second one, not too great. I didn't like the environment. I was just like, no, thank you very much. But you know, and after the second one, I was like, man, like maybe I should go back to Canada. Like maybe I should just end this journey. It's been fun, you know, whatever. Third and last interview. This is where the story gets good. So I am feeling a little down, but I'm like, you know what? Gotta, you know, do this interview. Just pick yourself up and do it. And essentially I meet this lady named Catherine, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not too sure if her name's Catherine, but my memory is telling me her name's Catherine. And she's my interviewer or whatever for the position, and we get to talking, and I'm doing really well. I'm really feeling her vibe, she's feeling my vibe. And she's like, so yeah, you're from Toronto. And I'm like, yeah, like, have you ever been? Like, do you know? You're just making small talk. And she's like, oh, amazing. Like, how long have you been here? And I'm like, oh, well, I just got back from Asia, actually. She was, I believe she was Filipino, or yeah, she was Filipino. And I just got back from Asia, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, no way, I have to go to Asia soon. And I was like, oh, no way, like, why, you know? And basically, before that happens, I'm telling her how, like, I just got back from Asia. I'm kind of, like, in a weird spot where, you know, blah, blah, blah. Just kind of having a really quick girl talk. Like, I feel like she could handle, you know, a little bit of personal information. And I told her about, like, my living situation or whatever. And next thing you know, she's like, you know what, I actually have to go to Filipino to my grandmother's funeral. I'm going for 3 weeks, and I actually need someone to look after my cat while I'm away. Do you want to house sit and look after my cat for 3 weeks and get yourself back together, and I'll definitely try to get you this position? I was like, what? Like, are you sure? Like, guys, in that moment, all of my problems were solved. I thanks to Catherine, I had a place to live rent-free for 3 weeks, and I had just to watch her really lovely cat, and it was downtown the core. She got me the position, so I was making money. I didn't have to pay rent for 3 weeks, and rent is paid weekly in Australia, mind you, right? So I was just taken care of by the goodness of the universe aligning me with Catherine and her kind-heartedness, and because of her and the way everything worked out, I was able to get back on my feet, find my own place right after, and save up money and finish the rest of my Australian visa, right? And then I stayed in Melbourne for the next 7 months, and it was just such a moment for me where I get a little emotional thinking about it, because it's like, damn, the universe loves me. And the universe loves you too. And that's why I'm sharing this this story. Shit, what is this camera saying? What does 0 mins mean? Hopefully it's still recording. But yes, it just aligned so perfectly, feeling like Goldilocks. That third and final interview, persevering, like that 3 weeks was everything I could have asked for, and I didn't have to sleep on the dirty, floor with the cat feces. I was saved by her and by the universe and by my circumstances, and the universe threw me a solid because I was in the dumps.